Hey everybody, this is Amy Anamkara, and I am here with Catherine Ewing today, and we are going to talk about self-sabotage. But before we do that, let's just kind of like Catherine, maybe tell everybody a little bit about us, and then without taking up too much space,
Yeah.
and then we'll dive right in.
Why don't you go first?
Oh, all right, okay. So okay. So I call myself Amy Anamkara. Anamkara is Gaelic for soul friend. And it's something that I have discovered, that I actually have a soul friend. And it's been amazing. And everybody has an Anamkara. And it's just, it's traveling with me right now in this body, but it's been with me through many lives, and it has a purpose. And I am working right now to help my Anamkara achieve their soul purpose. So that's what I'm working on right now. I am an energy practitioner with using healing touch, and I am loving it. And I hope to use it with the dying. So yeah.
Beautiful. I'm glad you shared that, because I was wondering what
Really?
the Anamkara was, because I hadn't seen that
Mhm.
before. I think this is the first time I've actually noticed that on your,
Yeah,
Facebook
yeah.
or whatever.
So
So
everybody is an Anamkara, right? I mean, and we're all making friends with each other, and we're all making connections with each other's souls. So it's just as much a connection as it is with ourselves. So yeah,
lovely.
yeah.
Well, I'm delighted to be here.
Thank
Ever
you.
since we first made acquaintance at the Women's Consortium,
Mhm,
I think we felt a bit of a kinship, right?
mhm. Yes,
So
yes.
I'm delighted to be here. So I'm a licensed clinical social worker, have been primarily doing um, trauma therapy for the last 27 years in private practice, but very using a lot of alternative modalities, because even though I'm an LCSW, I was never trained clinically. When I got my MSW, it was in community organizing, group work, and women's issues. And I did the first 12 years, I did rape crisis work, domestic violence, um, union organizing for women. And then I did 6 years at DCF as a protective service worker. And by the time I left there, I was supervising the sexual abuse and severe family violence unit.
Heavy
So
stuff.
very heavy stuff. And while I was on maternity leave, I was getting the call to go into private practice. And I was like, no, I don't, it was never anything that interested me. I stayed completely away from it, but the call, when you get a call, it's pretty hard to ignore. And I just decided that I would follow, my heart, and I joined a practice, and very soon realized that traditional clinical work was not going to, I wasn't going to be able to stay doing that practice if it
Mhm.
was just working in that way, because I never felt that I was really helping clients to get to the root. And I now know from my human design and a whole bunch of other things that getting to the root is my MO, right?
Right.
So that was the way spirit put me more on my spiritual path. So I started looking for other ways to work with clients, but I didn't go down a clinical route. I went down a very spiritual, energy focused, metaphysical, epigenetics, law of attraction, all the stuff.
Mhm.
And ended up getting certified in, 6 or 7 or 8 energy healing modalities. Went through the 2-year seminary of spiritual peacemaking, um, all the time building my own spiritual practice, and eventually landed on tapping.
With you, Patrick. Oh,
He loves me so much.
I know. Sorry.
landed on tapping as a way to really integrate the energy work along with sort of, the talk therapy that people wanted. So that's sort of been my journey. I am winding down there and have been building a coaching practice for women for a number of years, and doing a lot of the same kind of work, but really more with a focus on the emergence of the divine feminine on the planet, because Yeshua and Magdalene gave me that charge about 15 years ago. And I didn't know what they were talking about, but again, it's like, okay, just keep showing me, just keep laying out the,
just going with it.
I'll just roll with it. So a lot of it has to do with healing your deepest wounds as a pathway to giving birth to your greatest gifts. It's sort of like the heroine's journey. Women do that journey, or the feminine energy does that journey differently than the masculine.
Right.
The masculine pushes through and fights and da-da-da-da, and the feminine tends to eventually go more internally and use her intuition and her higher knowing and her connection to spirit and connection to resources in the physical world and in the spirit world and in the animal world, as a way to do the healing and overcoming, and then eventually the transformation into a higher expression of herself. So that's the journey that I love to take women on.
It's amazing. It's amazing.
Yeah.
So, I had this, the reason why this came about is because I had a conversation with a coworker, and we were talking about why we can't get to a certain place. Whether it's our purpose or whatever it is, a health situation, whatever it is. And we ended up getting onto self-sabotage and how strong that is in keeping us from our purpose, keeping us from our goals, our passions. And I thought, oh my gosh, I need to do this. And I know who I want to do this with. I want to do this with Catherine, right? And so I'm so glad you said yes.
Hey. Yay. I always love an opportunity to collaborate and also to share. I feel like I'm in this, sort of wise woman phase of my life. And I say that without ego. Right.
The crone.
Well, actually,
fine.
Years ago, a business coach who I love, but who is very wise and very much into archetypal energy and understanding. And she, even in looking at a business, she describes the 4 quadrants, and in that looks at not the 3 maiden, mother, crone, but 4 stages of a woman's life that would correspond with the seasons and with the directions. So it's maiden, mother, queen, crone. And I like that much better.
Yeah, I like that.
Because literally you're in your sovereignty, you understand your power, you understand you have power, but you also understand the responsibility that comes in the use of that power for the benefit of others. It's not power for yourself, it's power in service, right? And I love that, because everybody's saying, oh, at 60, you turn into a crone. And I'm like, sorry, not happening.
Right.
So I love that Joanna speaks of, so, it's spring, summer, fall. It's like the fall, we're in our harvest. We're reaping all of the wonderful bounty of everything that we have created and then worked through. And now we can really be in our bounty and share that abundance.
I love it. I love it. So what I'm hoping that this conversation will be organic and fun, and maybe we can tell some funny stories, about our own experiences with self-sabotage. I know I have lots of them, and I still battle. I'm battling. I will probably battle the self-sabotage behavior for, I don't know, maybe well into the rest of my life. I
What
figure.
if, what if we decided tonight that we're not going to battle it anymore?
Yeah.
Because I have a whole different way of looking at this, which is part of why I wanted to have this conversation.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm happy to. Yeah. And I
Um,
have some really interesting thoughts myself, which has all just come to me, and it's amazing.
yeah.
But let's go for it. Go.
Well, I also have a really interesting story that speaks, but it's fairly long. So I don't want to take up the whole time with just that story.
Right.
Um, so I guess what I would like to say, and I don't know how we, I don't know if more people, how we tell if people are watching on Facebook or whatever. I don't understand the technology of this,
It's
but
all good. Whatever
if
comes in, comes in.
if at some point we want to do an exercise around that, I would be happy to do some actual exercise or somatic work around this, because I think it's super powerful. I'm doing this with clients all day, all the time. And it's really, so we know that our primitive brain is wired for our survival.
Correct.
Right?
That
Right.
ego. Hmm.
And but it serves a purpose. I mean, when we were children, and whatever was happening in our family system, even if we had the most loving of parents, let's face it, our developmental needs at any particular time may not have been met. Whether it was just we didn't feel heard, we didn't feel, nobody really wanted to hear about our feelings. We were, be quiet, go sit down, don't bother me. They worked all day, whatever. I mean, there's a tremendous range from loving, but people who are still living it with their own wounds and limitations and whatever, versus very abusive or dysfunctional, right? So we all grew up with some aspect of that. But even if we grew up in a home which was basically loving, my family, there were 8 of us and I was 7th. So there was love. There was a lot of love, but you need a lot of love to go around with 8 kids, right?
Right.
So there was never a lot of one-on-one time or special time or that kind of thing. So my point is the ego mind, the survival brain, adapts between the time we're 6 months in utero till about 6.5 years old, when we're just coming out of the slower brainwave states of theta and then alpha.
Right.
And so we don't really
Waking up.
have any defenses around, and everything that's happening in our world is just being input into our nervous system, like a data entry operator is just. So if there's stress in the household, if there's fighting, if there's money issues, if there's just whatever's going on, an infant is picking up. Whatever they're laying down, the infant is picking up with no ability to, they're just like sponges, like those little dried up sponges you throw in the sink and they go,
Right.
and they turn into a Tyrannosaurus Rex or something like that. So what happens. So in that process, we may have gotten a lot of messages about your emotions are not welcome here, or don't say too much, it'll get you in trouble, or, girls do this or boys do that or whatever. So all of that stuff stays as programming, right? It all gets wired in. And it becomes our operating system, I call it our personal energy signature. It has an energetic vibration, right? We all sort of have an energetic vibration that matches that level of experience that we had. And so self-sabotage, if we think about self-sabotage, it's actually a protective mechanism. It's trying to stop us from doing something that our ego feels would threaten us in some way. Now, the ego defines threat differently than we do. It's certainly not a saber-toothed tiger chasing us, but there's a lot of stimulation in our world, and our primitive brain has not changed since, it was created, whenever that was. And so the brain is trying to adapt to so many different things, and it can perceive things like your boss calling you into the office maybe just wants to tell you did a good job, but that's not where your mind is going, right? Your mind is going to the, oh crap, what did I do wrong? I'm going to get in trouble. So the self-sabotage is a way of buffering you down, of keeping you back, of not letting you fully express as a way to keep you safe, and repeating the same patterns that you've always repeated because they're the ones that got you here. So why would we change that? So as soon as we start to do something different or step out or change a pattern or a habit, we get to a certain point along the way, and then all of a sudden the nervous system picks up that, there's something in the field, right? There's an intruder in the field,
right.
And all the anxiety and the sabotage and the negative self-talk and the self-doubt, it's like a dam breaks, right? It all just comes to stop us in our tracks from, like, I was talking about this today, and I said it's like when I ran a marathon in Washington, D.C., and the last 2/10, so a marathon, of course, is 26.2 miles. The last 2/10 of this marathon was uphill. It's like, who thought this would be a good idea, right? But,
right.
And so it's like literally the force of the universe is you're like slug, but you're not going to stop at that point. But everything in you wants you to stop. You're just like, no.
Right.
It's a little like that. Everything in you. Your ego is just doing the job to try to keep you safe and protected. So if we can hold that understanding of self-sabotage, then we get to have compassion for the parts of ourselves that are in fear around doing whatever the thing is that we want to be doing, that our logical mind thinks we want to do, but our primitive mind is saying, oh no, that's not safe.
You and I are exactly on the same wavelength. Like, honestly, I couldn't say it any better. For sure.
Probably shorter.
No, but I mean, but for sure, the ego is about self-preservation. Mm-hmm. And it just wants you to get to the next day. It wants you to stay in the same place because it regards it as safe, even if it's not even safe, even if that doesn't even make sense.
Well, the funny thing is they say your comfort zone, but I just say it's a familiarity zone because it's very rarely comfortable there.
So I can't believe you said that, because I wrote down earlier, it's what we accept to be what we deserve. Mm-hmm. So, if we believe that this is where we should be, then that's where we're going to find the comfort in it. And it's not
a distinction. It's not like in our minds we say, oh, I don't deserve good things, or, oh, I don't deserve to make a decent living, or I don't deserve to attract a loving partner. I mean, our thinking mind top of mind, we want all of those things. It's the subconscious programming that we picked up along the way,
right,
that says, oh, good girls don't ask for things, right? Or I was talking about the good Catholic girl in me today because I'm taking a writing course, and this was interesting because you want to talk about your self-sabotage come up. You try. Well, maybe you do write, but it's what's under the surface. It's all that's laid down in that subconscious programming. Right. If you imagine the image of the iceberg, and you've heard me use this analogy, when I'm teaching EFT, if you look at the image of the iceberg, the little tiny bit that sticks up above the water is only 3 to 5% of that huge mass. And that's the same for the mind. The thinking, the cognitive mind, what you know is only 3 to 5%. Everything else is what's been programmed in there up until, this moment when we got on this call.
Right.
And that's really the driver. That little bit of the iceberg isn't what's pulling that big iceberg around. That big iceberg is what's pulling that little cap around, right? So
Right.
the same thing, the 95% of us that's unconscious is what's running the show. Even if the 3 to 5% wants something different.
Yeah. I love though what you said about, and I just, this came to me only recently was, the ego has kind of like a bad rap, and that really, like we just said, it's about, keeping us safe. And if we look at our ego, that part of the mind, with compassion, then we're able to slow it down
Keyword.
and talk to it, right? And talk to it, and bring it down, bring it down.
Yeah.
So, wow, I'm like so excited that you said all that, because that's exactly where I was going with this. It's amazing.
And when you think about the fact, internal family systems talks about that, that we all have parts, right? There's every younger part of ourselves, every wounded part of ourselves is still part of our consciousness. So I'll take this writing class that I'm using, for example. Do you know Lissa Rankin? Have you read any of her
No.
books? The first one is about 10 years old now, Mind Over Medicine. She was an OBGYN who left her practice because it was killing her, basically.
Oh, wow.
Her most recent book is called Sacred Medicine, and she's written many in between, including some memoirs. And so she had us do this little visualization of, yourself, me, Catherine, this aspect of me sitting at the head of a board table. And I've got a book proposal that I'm outlining it, and I'm going to write this and that and the other thing. And on one side of the table are all the parts of me that are like, yeah, go, great. And the other side of the table is like, don't you dare.
Yeah, right.
No, it's not safe. It's dangerous.
Right.
So it's like, which parts are stepping on the brake and which parts are stepping on the gas? Because we've all got that going on all the time. There are some parts that are saying, yeah, let's go, let's do this feels good. And then there are other parts that are saying, no way, Jose, not doing it. So what I like to do, both for myself, sometimes I do it in journaling, sometimes it's just a more somatic experience, is to just invite my clients, to get quiet, close their eyes, maybe put their hand. I might do some sound, my tingshaws or my bowl or something, or the heart-brain coherence exercise. And then just invite them to notice where in their body they feel that resistance, right? And then we can start moving the breath into that area to start breaking up the resistance. And then I might ask them to imagine a younger part of themselves that doesn't want them to do X, Y, or Z, or is frightened about this. And sometimes people get really clear information, sometimes they don't. But even if they don't respond with, some kind of, great feedback, your parts are hearing that I'm paying attention to you. I want to know how it feels to be you. I want to know what your fear is about this. Why are you afraid of this? Why do you think, and just like a little child kind of like tugging at your pant leg, you wouldn't just like,
Right.
I mean, I've seen that. I worked for DCF, but I don't think anybody on this call would choose that as their parenting style. Instead, you would turn to the child and say, honey, what's the matter?
What's going on? Right.
Like, what's going on? You need to come up on my lap for a few minutes. Usually it happens when you get at a phone call or a Zoom call. All of a sudden they're like aware that you're not focused on them, right? Yeah. You wouldn't shame the child. You wouldn't say, get out of here, you pest, you're bothering me, or I got work to do. Some days will be better than others, but generally you're going to turn your attention to that part and just say, I'm so happy to see you. Come on up. Let's have a little conversation. What's going on? And just offer that acceptance and that openness. And then, as you know, imagining it's a real child who stubbed their toe, or whatever, just said I missed you, or then just honoring that. Oh, I'm so sorry you felt that way. I'm right here. Everything is okay, right? And this is how we reparent the parts of ourselves that haven't been adequately parented. And every time we do it for ourselves, then there's less need for them to react like this, right? You're calming your entire nervous system. You're turning down the activation on the amygdala. You're helping to shift from the sympathetic into the parasympathetic. And everything can start to settle down.
Yeah. I mean, the way I look at it, and it's similar. I don't necessarily do the breathing exercise, but I do take some time to sit with it. And just like you said, I question it. What exactly are you afraid of?
Mm-hmm.
So, I'm trying to think of a good example that won't give too much away. But I don't know, like you could say, here's we're going on a trip and I'm anxious about going on a plane. I don't necessarily like to go on a plane. And so I am thinking up all kinds of excuses how to get out of this trip, trying to self-sabotage it, any way that I can. And I just sort of had to sit down and say to myself, like, what is going on here? What are you afraid of? And just, it's like chipping away a little bit, and I understand, but this is what we're going to do. This is how, I can help you with this part. I can help you with that part, and just kind of walking myself through it.
Yeah.
And it's a conversation that may happen a number of times. It's not going to be a one-time, deal. I notice, I mean, since I really decided to do this talk, I really started looking at my daily behavior, and it's astonishing how much I self-sabotage, or I have self-sabotaging thoughts. I don't, but those thoughts come in, and how I have to just calm myself and redirect it, and take care of my ego.
So, yes. Yeah. And of course, because you're bringing your awareness to it now, you're going to notice it even more, right? It's like, you get a new car, and then all of a sudden you realize everybody in the world is driving that same car that you've never seen before, but
Exactly. Right.
Yeah. So, and again, getting back to my, sort of posed question in the beginning, can we sort of redefine it or think differently about it? Even using different terminology and not calling it self-sabotage. Even when one of my parts wants to protect me, even when a scared part is putting up some resistance, right? And just get away even from the whole identity of self-sabotage, because how powerful our words are. So even when we say it, our cells are kind of responding to it, even if we're saying, I'm not going to do it anymore. As opposed to, I'm going to notice when I may be getting in my own way, or
exactly right.
Just I've never been one. I think it's another reason why I didn't really want to go into clinical work. I've never been big on like diagnosing or, giving things labels, because I think it just creates a mindset and a rigidity around it that kind of gets us locked in. So even, how can we be more spacious with this? How can we bring more compassion even to the way that we're speaking about the brain that is just doing its job, right? Trying to protect us, and the younger aspects of us who might be in fear for very good reason. It's a good reason for them, whether, we might look at it and say, wow, that was kind of ridiculous, but Your 4-year-old might not think that way, or your 11-year-old might not feel that way. Yeah,
you're right. So I'm just going to look at like what I have in my notes, because I wrote a few things down, so I mean, like basically the root of the behavior is, what would you say? Fear, right? Fear of whatever. Could be
fear of being seen, fear of, because if I'm seen, then I may be punished, or I may be blamed, or I may be bullied, or I may be rejected, or I may be embarrassed, or I may be humiliated, or I may be made to do something that I don't want to do. Right. So better to not show up.
Exactly. I love it.
And you with the airplane, I remember years ago when I was early days of doing EFT, so it's like 2006 or 7, I got a call from a guy who said, "Help! I'm terrified to fly. My wife's going to divorce me if we can't go visit her family." And it was in a South American country. We haven't seen them for 20 Christmases. And if I don't go this year, it's over.
Yeah.
So, this is not so much self-sabotage. It wasn't like he was doing it to himself per se, but he just couldn't get past his terror about flying. And he really didn't know why. But when we started to do the tapping work, what came up was 2 things that were mind-blowing to me, but he hadn't made the connection in his own mind. One was when he was younger, as punishment, his grandmother used to make him, how you can, in old homes, you have a set of stairs and there might be a cutout little closet underneath. Like
Well,
they used to put him in there for punishment in the dark when he was like 3, 4, 5, 6 years old. So he got claustrophobic, afraid of closed-in places. Okay. I mean, that came up as we were tapping, that he was seeing it in his mind's eye. And I was like, how did you forget this? But the last time they had been to that country, at the airport, there are armed guards with rifles hanging over them, they're strapped on.
Right.
And they separated him from his wife and his children and took him into an interrogation room for hours. And he didn't know what was going to happen. He didn't know whether he was going to see his wife and kids again, honestly. And eventually they let him out. They let him go. But as soon as he stepped foot on the airplane, he just started to panic. And he said he had to walk the whole time. He just felt trapped and panicky and he couldn't breathe. But he had forgotten that. It's like his mind pushed it out of his conscious awareness. So, we did tapping or EFT around that and some other things. I gave him some other, things to use, like some essential oils or, the rescue remedy spray or whatever. And, I got a call from him after New Year's. We're back. I won. I did it. But, so that wasn't one was a younger part of him. One was a part that was 20 years younger than he was now. But it made perfect sense why he would have this fear. But he never, again, put it together. And that may not be everybody's experience, something that's to me quite obvious.
No, but that's this, what we were talking about. That's that ego stepping in and saying, I'm going to protect you. And just accessing tools that you have at your fingertips that can really help you.
Yeah.
And
the ego doesn't want you to not have any control. The ego, and in an airplane, you really don't have any control. Once you sit down in that big metal machine and it goes in the sky, you have no control.
Right.
And so
thanks, Catherine.
Well, the same could be said for your car. Well, you have a little more.
No, I know, I'm just teasing. I'm driving the car. I'm not driving the plane, but that's fine.
And I know you work in the spirit realm. So
Yeah.
I'm going to go a little out of the box here and bring in a couple of other things. The things that we are afraid of or have judgment around or a belief system about may very well have been handed down through our ancestral line, right? Potato famine, Holocaust, you know, wherever we came from, wherever our mothers, right?
Right.
Everyone is carrying their own
trauma, right? It's
trauma,
ancestral
and
trauma.
the programming of that that gets passed down through, you know, the ancestral DNA. So we can turn to the younger part of ourselves with compassion and love. That's one way. We can also invite our ancestors in to see if anybody's got any information about this for us. You know, that's another way to do it. Or for me, the story that I had, well, I have several, but the one in particular that I was thinking of, it was past life. So very, very clearly came through when I went to do a journaling exercise about why I kept being so confused about my life purpose. And I literally was sitting in a room up in the Santa Barbara Mountains where I was at a coach's retreat in an old camp, and everybody was off sleeping, and I was in the center room. You know how on the camps there's the like little living room in the middle and then the bunk rooms on the side.
Right. I'm
out there in the living room area in the dark with a flashlight or something, or maybe there was a light, and I'm doing this active imagination exercise. I'm writing to the consciousness of confusion, asking it what its role is in my life at this time. And it blew open this past life memory that literally blew my mind. And I won't tell you, you know, it's a long story. I won't get into the whole story, but basically, you know, the end of the story is that confusion was keeping me away from actually knowing my purpose, because in that life, and then I found out in many others, I was either burned at the stake, stoned to death, banished, run out of the village, put in stocks, you name it. I had it. So if I was confused about why I was here and therefore didn't step into my purpose, I was going to save myself from that kind of ending again.
Okay, so now you just opened up something for me. So I mean, we associate the ego with the mind, but it sounds from what you're saying is that the ego mind has access to all of that ancestral line. That's what it sounds like.
I wouldn't say the ego. When we open our higher consciousness, so in this active imagination, writing, you know, it's almost like a brainwave state, right? It's and you're opening to the consciousness of confusion, because everything is energy. So you're really inviting the energy of confusion to come in, just like you would call in an angel,
right?
Or you would call, you know, in an ascended master, or you would call in a loved one who's passed on. You can do that with the energy of a quality or a virtue or a way of being. So it's not going on in the ego mind so much, which is more, you know, sort of keeping track of things and, you know, more like the computer, information in, information out. It's opening up to a higher consciousness that then informs us.
Informs the ego, right? Is that what you mean?
I would say comes in through the higher self.
Okay.
You know, I mean, I don't want to go on, I don't want to go on Facebook, you know. I don't want the whole world to hear me say this, because I'm not 100% sure of the mechanism, but for
Right.
me, the ego is all about.
It's about being connected to the earth. It's about the earth experience. It's about the world experience.
So like if you look at the role of the ego versus the role of the soul talks about eternity. The ego, it's this lifetime. It's time to get this done.
Gotcha.
Soul talks about everything is learning. The ego talks right or wrong.
Right.
Soul talks about, hey, take risks, try things. It's all part of your earth school. And the ego is about, that's right or wrong, that's good or bad, that's black or white. Right. So they're very distinct. So that's why I'm saying I don't know that the ego necessarily is part of this process. There might be some part of the mind that is engaged in interpreting some of what I'm seeing or hearing or feeling or sensing.
Right.
But I'm not sure I would call it the ego.
That makes sense. That makes sense.
Feels more expansive than just the role of the ego.
That makes sense. That makes sense. That's great. That's great. So do you have anything else?
They want to put, we don't want the ego running the show. We don't want the ego in the driver's seat. We want the ego to be in the passenger. So then who's driving? If the ego's in the passenger seat, what's driving is the rest of our consciousness with all of our higher level intuition, knowing, connection to source, clairaudience, clairvoyance, clairsentience, claircognizance, clairagnosticism, right? All of that spirit in form is what's hopefully driving and then assigning some tasks to the ego, as opposed to the ego trying
to control,
map out the route, decide what car we're taking.
And so that's what happens. You know, that's why, you know, people don't find their purpose or access their purpose, or, you know, go for the job that they want or have the relationship that they want. Because it's blocked and they don't listen to it, or they don't listen to their soul. So is how I want to say it. Or just, you know, like we talked about before, just kind of like going to the ego with some compassion and finding out what's at the root of it.
Understanding.
Yeah.
The other thing that I wrote a blog about this so many years ago, an article for my newsletter about this word purpose.
We've talked about this.
And I sort of talked about it in two different ways. There's sort of being on purpose, and then there's sort of being in your purpose. And then other people would say our purpose is just to find the greatest joy and expansion that we can in this lifetime, right? And you know, that's lovely. I mean, I don't know that all of us. So one is a being and one is a doing. So someone's purpose might just be to bring joy. Like they're the person who, when they walk in the room, they light up the room, or the one who always seems to have some beautiful thing, some loving, compassionate thing to say to someone, or, you know, someone who is just so full of artistic, but they may not make their living doing that. So you can be in your purpose, right? To be creativity, to be joy, to be love, to be compassion, to be, some people are just abundance, you know, they're just like, and then the other part is you can find a way to make a living expressing your purpose. You know, in my case, I jumped there, you know, like I
Right.
literally turned my life upside down, leave the job, leave the marriage, leave the home, leave the kids, leave the dogs, you know,
Right.
and stepped into my purpose, you know, big time. But that may not be everybody's sole assignment in this lifetime. Their purpose may be to learn self-love or self-compassion or how to set boundaries, right? And you know, I share that with a lot of my clients who have been through terrible trauma. Like, why did this happen to me? And I talk, you know, some about soul choice and soul contracts, not with everybody. Not everybody's ready for that conversation. And I wouldn't want to make someone feel like, oh, I brought this on myself. So they have something else to blame themselves for.
Right.
But, you know, if people are, you know, so as I say, have eyes to see and ears to hear, then I'll share with them this idea that, you know, your soul maybe came to master a particular spiritual principle, grace or love or freedom or joy or, you know, compassion or forgiveness. And in that case, your soul and souls in your soul family would have chosen the perfect scenario for you to come in to incarnate into, that would be like the petri dish, right? That was going to give you everything you needed to master forgiveness or self-love or setting boundaries. Does that make sense?
Well, it makes total sense. And I've always, I think that many people are confused by that. They think that their purpose has to be like, they have to turn themselves into like Oprah Winfrey to actually matter.
Or yeah.
You know, and that's just not true. It's just not true. I think, but you have to do some work in tapping into figuring out what your purpose is. You know,
or just, I'm thinking of, you know, like the beautiful statues, like, you know, carved statues, where they carve away everything that's not the essential, right? You have a big piece of granite and the artist has something in mind that they want to create, but they're not creating it from nothing. They're chipping away at what is not necessary, what is excess, what is, you know, superfluous is the word that comes to mind. And if we can for me, it's more a matter of remembering than it is creating. So if we can let go of all of the beliefs that aren't serving us and the rigidities in our thinking and our judgments and, you know, even how the negative self-talk and all of that, as that falls away, then more and more of our own truth gets to shine in the world. So our purpose can come just from getting rid of all the stuff that's not us. I used to have a spiritual teacher by the name of Jim Self, who said, don't worry if you're forgetting stuff. He said, it's like you're in your spin cycle of the washing machine. Everything that's no longer essential is spinning off, spinning off, spinning off, spinning off. So that's all that's left is your divine essence.
Right. That's beautiful. And I think that that's exactly what we're talking about. And that's when you're having that conversation with that part of you that's having all the negative talk, it's just like you're saying, you're clearing away, you're cleaning it out. It's a process.
It's lifetimes of process, you know, and some of us, again, have been here more lifetimes. So we may be closer to actually, you know, realizing that and maybe not having to come back again because we've, you know, and younger souls, you know, may not be at that part in their journey. So there's no judgment really. although I judged myself terribly when everybody else seemed to know what they were here for.
Right.
But sometimes it's just not in this lifetime to have to feel like, oh my God, this is my purpose,
Yeah. Someone in Facebook a couple of days ago asked me if we were going to be talking about self-sabotage in relationships. And so I can only imagine, I don't necessarily know what that looks like, other than maybe making poor choices, patterns. I don't know. I don't even know what to say to
I
that.
think it's a whole
It
topic
is,
in
right?
and of itself, right? Because, if it's two people coming into relationship, each of them is obviously bringing their own history with their own trauma, with
Right.
their own unhealed wounds, with their own hurts, with their own family patterns and belief systems, with their own patterns from their own parents about how they related to each other, if they even had two parents relating to each other. There's just so much. And then you come into relationship and all of your insecurities start getting triggered because it's an opportunity for growth. So the coming into relationship is either an opportunity for growth if both people are conscious enough and committed to do that, or it can just turn into a shitstorm.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And again, unconsciously, I was reading a book probably like a year ago now. I keep wanting to say, a month or so, but it's probably like a year, called Tantric Dating. And she said something really funny. She said, when you're looking for the perfect partner and you meet somebody and the fireworks are going off and you're like, oh my God, this is my soulmate.
Right.
There's all this energy. She's like, run as fast as you can in the other direction, because this is not love. This is trauma bonding.
Oh.
Yeah, like you're literally activating each other's highest emotion. And in the beginning, it can feel like passion, but it will eventually just turn into two people playing out their, what does Eckhart Tolle say, their pain bodies with each other. So, without knowing more specifically what she was referencing in that question, I think if we haven't done a significant amount of our own inner work, our healing work, as much as we love someone, we can be triggered by what they do, what they don't do, what they say, what they don't say, if they text too much or they don't text enough, if he, whatever,
right.
Whatever it is. And then we can fall back into these patterns of self-protection, whether it's getting really quiet, whether it's withdrawing, or whether it's attacking, picking fights, So I guess that's probably the best thing that comes to mind specifically around this self-sabotage. Also, I would say if we have experiences of having been really hurt in relationship, and that could be sexual abuse by a parent, or, some kind of ongoing trauma, either within our family system or, as my daughter just said the other day, my formative relationships were not that healthy, right? And so if there's a lot of pain, there's going to be a lot of protection going on.
Right.
I don't want to be vulnerable. I'm not going to be weak here. I'm not going to let anything get by me, so that protecting the wounded heart.
Right. I was also thinking about, you could also, within a relationship, blow it up And that's a form of self-sabotage. You know, you could meet a great guy who
Yeah.
or gal or whatever that that is treating you like gold, and you know,
Yeah, because if you've got
sabotage
patterns
that.
running about I'm not deserving, I'm not worthy, I'm not good enough, he's going to find out what I'm really like, and then he's going to dump me.
Right.
So better from, and you may not even be aware of all that stuff, but it's running in the background. You
Right.
know, you were told you're unlovable, you're useless, you're just a loser, nobody's ever going to want you. Like, um, yeah, whether it's the picking the fights or blowing it up some other way, accusations,
Right.
or you go cheat, you go looking for something somewhere else, um, because at least then you're in control. You're not gonna be blindsided on
Right.
the receipt.
Right. And you're not the one that's going to get hurt. Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, you're gonna get hurt eventually, but you're at least gonna know,
Yeah, I mean,
it's
it
not
doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make sense.
right.
You know, a lot of those situations don't make sense at all, but it's still that type of negative behavior.
Yeah.
What about the type of sabotage that we do, like for our health, for instance, like um like you're great all day, let's say eating, and then you come home and you binge.
Yeah.
That's self.
I don't know anything about that.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about it.
Oh, you mean that Kit Kat bar that I just
Yeah,
ate?
yeah. I got a package of Oreos in there that could tell a story right now. Yeah, yeah. Like, we do so great, and then the end of the day we sabotage ourselves, and then we know. I mean, even before we even have our hand on the cookie, man, we know,
Yeah,
and we
we're
just
not
keep.
stupid.
I mean, but it's
As I'm putting the Haagen-Dazs in the grocery cart,
right,
oh, they're 3 for $10. Awesome.
right.
Like, oh man, I'm gonna be sick as a dog tonight.
Yeah, like, why do we do those things?
Yeah, that I have less of a really good.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, for me, sometimes it's like, come on, I gotta have something.
right.
You can't give up everything. I eat pretty clean, I exercise, I live a pretty healthy lifestyle. Um, and
So I like that, because what you just said, because your mind could be saying to you, what's the matter with you? Why can't you just do this? You're weak. You're this way, you're that way. And then going back at your ego and saying, there's nothing wrong with me having, 3 Oreos. Like,
right.
and just
And distinguishing if you're shoving the entire sleeve in as a way to have, a sugar coma,
right,
because you've learned somewhere along the way that eating like that
right,
can numb you out, right?
right.
Usually, it's you hiding in the closet, shoving food in as your parents are having a screaming match,
Yes.
or, so having the wherewithal to be able to distinguish, all right, I'm a grown adult in my right mind, and I'm choosing to buy this thing and have 2 or 3 of them or whatever, as opposed to being emotionally upset about something, angry, sad, whatever, afraid, and using food in some way. We've all heard the comfort food
Right.
analogy. And the other thing is sugar's addictive. Sugar's addictive, 8 times more addictive than like cocaine or something. I mean, it's
Right. It's
crazy.
a whole other, it's a whole
Yeah.
other animal. Right.
Yeah.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But even, I mean, we could apply it to anything. Why am I not
Sure.
exercising more regularly?
Mm-hmm.
Why don't I call my siblings more often when I keep saying,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it's like, oh, I just don't want to have another conversation, or
Right. Right.
and
No,
then what are we going to do about that? Are we going to beat ourselves up about it, or are we going to offer ourselves some grace around it?
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So I guess that's it. It's been like an hour or so. Let me see. Yeah, it's been just about an hour, and this was perfect. This was perfect. This is
Yay.
exactly what I had envisioned. So is there anything that you want to close up with? How maybe how people can get in touch with you if they want to chat with you, or I don't know.
Yeah, I've been on kind of a sabbatical, as you know, back in
So you might want to keep that.
March. Back in March, I said I was going to go on sabbatical. Well, just a Facebook sabbatical. I mean, I'm still seeing my clients and I'm still doing some stuff in my coaching business and doing some teaching, but I was taking a social media sabbatical for a month, and now it's been April, May, June, July. We're 3.5 months in, and
Amazing.
I'm just sticking, I put this up, but I'm being very selective with my time and my energy right now. But I am happy, on my website, which is the name of my business is Sacred Heart Alchemy, right? We're transforming through the sacred container of the heart. So people can go to www.sacredheartalchemy.com, and there's a contact thing there where they can reach out and if they want to talk to me about my services or anything like that, they'll get a free gift, but they can even go to the scheduling link for a free 20-minute consultation. I'm always happy to talk to people. Yeah, and I would, normally I would say come join my Facebook group, but
but you're never on it.
It's dormant. It's dormant right now. So don't do that.
Great. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's it for now.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Catherine. I really appreciate this. Let's do this again.
It's always, it's
Come up
always
with a
my
good topic.
pleasure.
I'm always willing to chat. So, and we're like this. Right? Like our minds are like, wow.
Sisters.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, everybody, thank you so much. I'm going to record this. I'm going to I'm going to leave it on Facebook. I'm going to put it up on my YouTube. Catherine, you can share it as you would like as well.
Yeah, I also have YouTube. People can go there.
Oh, cool.
I'm not always great at posting regularly, but there's a lot of stuff on there.
Awesome. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much. And Catherine, I will see you soon. Goodbye, everybody.
Right, Amy, thanks again for the invitation. It's always a pleasure.
You're welcome. I'll see you soon.
All right. Bye. Bye, everybody.